The winter wind cut through Jennifer Smith's threadbare coat like knives as she huddled in the doorway of an abandoned shop in the kingdom's merchant district. At 22, she'd survived 2 brutal years on these streets by trusting her instincts and staying invisible. Omegas like her, without pack, without protection, learned quickly. Notice everything, trust no one, and never get involved in alpha business. The briefcase she'd found an hour ago made staying invisible impossible. She pulled it closer, examining it by the pale moonlight filtering through broken shutters. She'd discovered it near the fountain in the square, abandoned in the aftermath of what looked like a territorial dispute between rival packs. While others had fled the snarling confrontation, Jennifer had noticed the case lying forgotten on the cobblestones, and the embossed symbol burned into its leather surface, the Caruso family crest. Everyone in the kingdom knew that mark. It represented 3 generations of absolute alpha dominance, political power consolidated through strategic alliances and ruthless enforcement, and the current alpha king who ruled not just through birthright but through sheer, terrifying competence. Daniel Caruso's name was spoken with reverence and fear in equal measure. Jennifer had seen his face on royal proclamations posted throughout the city, always surrounded by his inner circle, presiding over council meetings where dissenting voices mysteriously fell silent. Even other alphas deferred to him. Opening the briefcase would be suicide. Keeping it would be worse. Her only option was to return it. But finding a man protected by palace guards, beta advisors, and layers of political protocol wasn't simple unless you understood the city's hidden rhythms the way Jennifer did. She'd spent her evening carefully gathering information from her network of street contacts, elderly Omegas who watched palace deliveries, market vendors who knew which carriages traveled where, night workers who observed which buildings stayed lit past curfew. By the midnight bell, she had her answer. The Caruso family's private office building in the government district, where the Alpha King conducted pack business after official court hours ended. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Jennifer stood outside the imposing stone structure, her worn cloak soaked through, clutching the briefcase against her chest like armor. The 2 guards flanking the entrance, both powerful betas, weapons clearly visible, looked at her with immediate suspicion and barely concealed disgust. An Omega. Alone. At this hour. "I need to see Alpha King Daniel Caruso," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, despite her Omega instincts screaming at her to submit, to flee. "I have something that belongs to him." The taller guard reached for a communication device, eyes never leaving her face. "Don't move." 10 minutes felt like hours before the heavy door opened. A man in his 40s emerged, wearing the formal attire of a high-ranking beta advisor. The second, she realized, recognizing him from official ceremonies. His sharp gaze swept over her, cataloging her youth, her circumstances, her desperation, and the briefcase in her hands. "You found something belonging to the Alpha King." His voice carried unmistakable authority and thinly veiled threat. Jennifer lifted the briefcase slightly. "This was left in the square tonight during the disagreement. The crest, I knew it had to be returned." The second's expression shifted minutely. Surprise, perhaps, at her directness, or suspicion about her motives. "How did you know to come here?" The palace would have been the obvious choice. The palace would have taken days of protocol to reach him. The streets talk to those who listen. "I knew he'd be here." He studied her for another long moment before gesturing toward the entrance. "Inside, the Alpha King will want to speak with you personally." Her pulse hammered as she stepped through the door into warm lamplight and the scent of expensive tobacco and old leather. The building appeared empty of regular staff, but 4 men occupied positions throughout the entrance hall. Pack soldiers. She recognized, always alert, always ready. At the end of the corridor, through an open doorway, sat the man himself. Alpha King Daniel Caruso looked exactly as dangerous as his reputation suggested. Even seated behind his desk, his presence filled the room. Dark hair, perfectly styled, strong jaw, wearing a tailored black suit that emphasized his powerful build. His white shirt was open at the collar, revealing the edge of what appeared to be pack markings. But it was his eyes, deep, intelligent, absolutely ruthless, that locked onto her with an intensity that made her breath catch, and her Omega instincts war between submission and flight. "So," his voice was deep, controlled, carrying an authority that made entire packs obey without question. "You're the honest soul who found my property." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. It wasn't a request. Jennifer approached cautiously, setting the briefcase on the polished wood before sitting. Every instinct screamed at her to lower her eyes, to expose her neck, to submit to the overwhelming alpha presence. But something deeper, pride, stubbornness, Or perhaps the survival instinct that had kept her alive made her meet his gaze. His soldiers watched from their positions, hands resting near weapons that could kill an Omega before she could even scream. Daniel opened the case, scanning its contents with practiced efficiency. Whatever he saw satisfied him. Important documents, untouched. She'd been careful not to even look inside. His gaze returned to her, and something shifted in his expression. Not softening men like him didn't soften, but curiosity replacing suspicion. The case was in the square during tonight's territorial dispute, he said, each word measured and precise. Most Omegas would have run from that confrontation immediately. You stayed, found this, and then you tracked me down to a location known only to my inner circle. He leaned forward slightly, and Jennifer felt the full weight of his attention like a physical force. My question is very simple. How did you know where to find me? Jennifer forced herself to hold his gaze, knowing that showing fear now would define how he saw her forever. I've lived on these streets for 2 years. You learn to see patterns others miss. Delivery schedules, guard rotations, which buildings stay active on which nights. I asked the right questions to the right people. Impressive intelligence network for an Omega with no resources. His tone suggested he was reassessing everything about her. What's your name? Jennifer Smith. Well, Jennifer Smith. He sat back, his expression unreadable. You've demonstrated remarkable honesty in returning property that could have been sold or ransomed for significant resources. You've also demonstrated concerning knowledge about my movements and locations. He paused, and the silence stretched like a blade. That combination makes you either incredibly valuable or dangerously problematic. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I just wanted to return what wasn't mine. I don't want trouble. Trouble found you the moment you touched that case. He signaled to the second, who stepped forward. Marcus, see that Miss Smith receives appropriate compensation for her honesty. To Jennifer. You'll also provide information about where you're currently staying. For your protection, of course. I don't have a permanent... She started, then stopped. Admitting homelessness to the Alpha King felt dangerous in ways she couldn't articulate. I see. Something flickered across his features. Concern? No, that was impossible. Alpha Kings didn't concern themselves with Omega circumstances. Then Marcus will arrange temporary accommodation, clean clothes, a proper meal. His voice hardened slightly, and she felt the Alpha command beneath his words. In exchange, you'll explain exactly what you know about my organization's operations and who you've been speaking with. It wasn't a request. It was never going to be a request. Jennifer realized she'd walked into a situation far more dangerous than sleeping in abandoned buildings. But as Daniel Caruso's dark eyes held hers, something else flickered in that gaze, something that made her wonder if danger was the only thing she should be worried about. The suite Antonio escorted her to was larger than any space Jennifer had occupied in years. Cream-colored walls, heavy curtains blocking out the pre-dawn darkness, furniture that looked both expensive and comfortable. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace, driving away the cold that had seeped into her bones. Fresh clothes in the wardrobe, Antonio said, his tone professionally neutral. Bathroom through there. The Alpha King expects you at breakfast. 7 o'clock sharp. Someone will collect you. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a lock. Jennifer stood motionless, afraid to touch anything with her dirty hands. This wasn't generosity. This was control. Daniel Caruso had effectively trapped her in luxury, ensuring she couldn't disappear back into the streets before he extracted whatever information he wanted. She should run. Every survival instinct screamed it. But where would she go? He knew her name now, knew her face. Men with his resources could find anyone. The hot shower felt like a fever dream. Jennifer watched 2 years of street grime swirl down the drain, scrubbing her skin until it turned pink. The clothes in the wardrobe fit surprisingly well, simple but quality. Someone had estimated her size with disturbing accuracy. At precisely 7 o'clock, a knock sounded. A young Omega woman stood in the hallway, her eyes downcast in proper submission. The Alpha King is waiting, miss. Jennifer followed her through corridors that spoke of generations of power. Paintings of previous Caruso Alphas lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge her. They arrived at a private dining room where Daniel sat at the head of a table set for 2. He'd changed into more casual attire, dark slacks, and a burgundy shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. His eyes tracked her movement as she entered, and she felt that same overwhelming Alpha presence that had nearly buckled her knees last night. Sit! He gestured to the chair at his right hand, not across from him, beside him, a position of either favor or scrutiny. Food covered the table, more food than Jennifer had seen in months. Her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Daniel's face. Eat. We'll talk after you've had a proper meal. I find interrogations go better when people aren't distracted by hunger. Is that what this is? An interrogation? That depends entirely on your answers, Jennifer. He poured her tea with surprising grace for someone so powerful. Let's start simple. Tell me about the briefcase. From the beginning. Jennifer reached for a piece of bread, buying time to organize her thoughts. The truth was her only weapon here, or at least, the carefully edited version of it. I was near the fountain when the fight broke out, she began. 2 packs I didn't recognize either. They were arguing about territory boundaries. It escalated quickly. And you stayed? Most Omegas would have fled immediately. His tone held genuine curiosity now. I did flee, but not far. I've learned that chaos creates opportunities, discarded items, dropped coins, things people abandon when they run. She met his gaze. Survival isn't pretty, Alpha King. Daniel, he corrected softly. When we're alone, you'll call me Daniel. The intimacy of that command sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. The briefcase was under a bench, she continued, half hidden by shadows. Everyone else had run. I recognized the crest immediately. Everyone knows the Caruso symbol. My first thought was to leave it, but you didn't. No, because I know what happens to Omegas who get caught up in Alpha business by accident. If someone had seen me near it, if it had been found missing and I'd been in the area, she shook her head. Returning it was safer than the risk of being blamed for taking it. Daniel leaned back, studying her with those impossibly dark eyes. A pragmatic decision. But tracking me down required more than pragmatism. It required knowledge that most of my own organization doesn't have. The streets are their own network. Information flows differently down there. Show me. He pulled out his phone, brought up a map of the city. Show me this network you claim to have. Jennifer hesitated. Revealing her sources would leave her with no protection, no secrets. But refusing would confirm his suspicion that she was more than a simple homeless Omega. She reached for the phone, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up her arm, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. The bond whispered between them. Impossible. Undeniable. Here, she said, forcing her voice steady as she pointed to locations on the map. The night markets where Omegas trade information. The delivery routes where drivers see everything. The corners where veterans watch territory changes. Daniel listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed just how sophisticated his understanding of the city was. He wasn't just a privileged alpha, he genuinely knew his kingdom. Impressive, he finally said. You've built something remarkable with nothing but observation and desperation. You sound surprised. I am. Most people underestimate what Omegas are capable of when survival depends on intelligence rather than strength. He paused. I won't make that mistake with you. The words felt like both a compliment and a warning. Why did you really return the briefcase, Jennifer? His voice dropped lower, more intimate. And don't tell me it was just about safety. You could have left the city entirely, disappeared. But instead, you walked straight into the den of the most dangerous alpha in the kingdom. Jennifer's heart raced. Because the truth, the real truth, was that when she'd touched that briefcase, something had pulled at her. Some instinct deeper than reason had told her she needed to find him. I don't know, she whispered. I just knew I had to. Daniel's hand moved, covering hers on the table. The touch was gentle but possessive. Neither do I, he admitted, but I'm going to find out. Daniel's hand remained on hers for a moment longer before he withdrew, leaving her skin tingling from the contact. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the palace gardens, his silhouette commanding even in stillness. I have a proposition for you, Jennifer. Her stomach tightened. Propositions from powerful alphas were never as simple as they sounded. You've demonstrated intelligence, resourcefulness, and a network of information sources that even my own operatives haven't fully penetrated. He turned to face her, backlit by the morning sun. I could use someone like you. Use me how? She kept her voice steady, though her pulse raced. The streets talk to you in ways they don't talk to my soldiers or my advisors. People see my pack coming and they disappear, change their stories, hide the truth. He moved closer, each step deliberate. But an Omega? A homeless girl asking questions? You're invisible to them. Trustworthy. You want me to spy for you? I want you to be my eyes and ears where mine can't reach. He sat on the edge of the table, close enough that she could smell his scent, pine and smoke, and something uniquely alpha. In exchange, you'll have protection. A room here in the palace. Food, clothes, safety from the streets, and from anyone who might wish you harm. It was everything she'd dreamed of during frozen nights in abandoned buildings. Security, warmth, a place to belong. And yet, I'd be betraying the very people who helped me survive, she said quietly. The network you want me to exploit. Those are Omegas and outcasts who trusted me because I was one of them. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Respect, perhaps. I'm not asking you to betray confidences or endanger innocence. I'm asking you to help me identify real threats, rival packs planning violence, criminals preying on the vulnerable, political conspiracies that could destabilize the kingdom. And if I refuse? The air grew heavy with unspoken threat. You already know too much about my private operations, my schedule, my security patterns. His voice remained gentle, but steel underneath. I can't let you simply walk back onto the streets with that knowledge. So your choices are these. Work with me willingly, or remain here as a guest, until I'm certain you pose no threat, a gilded cage or a hired informant. Neither option included freedom. Jennifer's survival instincts screamed at her to accept. This was the smart choice: protection from a powerful alpha, resources she desperately needed, a way off the streets that had nearly killed her a dozen times over. But her heart wavered, because she saw the calculation in Daniel's eyes, the way he'd maneuvered her into a corner with no real escape. This wasn't kindness. This was control, wrapped in the illusion of choice. And yet, beneath that calculation, something else simmered. The same pull she'd felt when touching the briefcase. The electricity when their hands had brushed. The way his alpha presence called to something deep in her Omega nature that she'd spent years suppressing. What exactly would you want me to do? She asked carefully. Daniel's expression shifted, sensing her capitulation. Continue your routines. Visit the markets. Talk to your contacts. Listen to the street gossip. But report back to me weekly at first. More often if you hear something urgent, I'll provide you with resources, a stipend for your contacts, protection if anyone threatens you. And if I discover something you don't want to hear, something that implicates your own people, then you tell me anyway. His gaze held hers with fierce intensity. I don't want a sycophant, Jennifer. I want the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. She wanted to believe him. That was the dangerous part. How do I know you won't just dispose of me when I'm no longer useful? Daniel moved closer, his hand reaching up to cup her chin, tilting her face toward his. The touch was possessive but surprisingly gentle, because whatever this is between us, this pull we both feel, it's not something I'm willing to throw away. Her breath caught. He felt it too. Is that what this offer is really about? She whispered. This connection? No. His thumb brushed across her cheek. The offer is strategic. You're valuable to my organization. But this... His eyes darkened, his alpha scent intensifying. This is something else entirely. Something I intend to explore. Every Omega instinct told her to submit, to lean into his touch, to accept both the offer and whatever else he wanted from her. But the part of her that had survived on the streets alone, that had learned to trust no one, held her rigid. I need time to think. You have until sunset. Daniel released her, stepping back. Antonio will show you the palace grounds. See what you'd be gaining. Then give me your answer. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Jennifer? Don't mistake my interest for weakness. If you run, I will find you. If you betray me, there will be consequences. But if you stand with me... His smile was dangerous and promising all at once. I'll give you more than just survival. I'll give you power. The door closed behind him, leaving Jennifer alone with a choice that felt like no choice at all. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Say yes, and she'd be bound to the most dangerous alpha in the kingdom, protected but controlled, safe but owned. Say no, and she'd be a prisoner or a target. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the third option her heart whispered, that she didn't want to refuse. That some part of her craved exactly what he was offering, not just the safety, but him. Jennifer closed her eyes, pressing her hands against the table to steady herself. By sunset, she would have to decide whether to trust the alpha who had trapped her so elegantly, or trust the instincts that had kept her alive, even if they screamed at her to run. Antonio collected her after breakfast, his expression unreadable. The Alpha King has requested your presence at the family council meeting. If you're to work for him, you need to understand what you're stepping into. Jennifer's stomach nodded. I haven't given my answer yet. Haven't you? Antonio's knowing look suggested her decision was already written across her face. The council room was everything the dining room hadn't been: cold, imposing, built for power rather than comfort. A massive table dominated the space, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Portraits of Caruso ancestors lined the walls, their painted faces stern and unforgiving. Daniel stood at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s sat to his right, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back severely. Her sharp eyes assessed Jennifer with the cold precision of someone who viewed people as chess pieces. She wore an elegant navy suit and carried herself with the authority of someone born to command. "My mother," Daniel said. "Victoria Caruso, former Alpha Queen and current head of family intelligence." Victoria's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "The homeless Omega who found my son's briefcase. How? Convenient."
The word dripped with suspicion. To Daniel's left sat a younger man, mid-30s, with the same dark Caruso features, but a cruel twist to his mouth. "My cousin, Rafael Caruso. He oversees our territorial enforcement." Rafael's eyes raked over Jennifer with undisguised contempt. "An Omega informant? This is what we've been reduced to, cousin? Recruiting street trash?" "Careful, Rafael." Daniel's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "She's under my protection." "For now," Rafael leaned back in his chair, "until she proves to be the liability we all know she'll become." An older man entered, his gray beard neatly trimmed, wearing the ceremonial robes of a pack elder. "Vincent Caruso," Daniel introduced. "My uncle and chief advisor to the crown." Vincent studied Jennifer with more curiosity than hostility. "The girl who knew where to find you during private business hours. Either remarkably clever or a plant from one of our rivals. Which is it, child?" "I'm not a plant," Jennifer said, forcing herself to meet his gaze despite her Omega instincts. "And I'm not a child." "Prove it." Victoria stood, circling Jennifer like a predator. "Tell us everything you know about our family's operations, every detail you've gathered from your precious street network." It was a test. Jennifer could feel all their eyes on her, waiting for her to fail. The Caruso family controls 70% of the kingdom's commercial territory through a combination of legitimate business holdings and pack loyalty networks, Jennifer began, her voice steady. "Your primary rivals are the Moretti Pack to the north and the Chen Coalition to the east. You've maintained peace through strategic marriage alliances and territorial agreements, but tensions have been rising for the past 6 months." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Continue." "Your enforcement division, led by Rafael, operates primarily through beta soldiers who can move through lower districts without attracting attention. But you've been losing ground in the merchant quarter. Small thefts, vandalism, challenges to your authority that suggest organized resistance rather than random crime." Rafael's smirk faded. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been living in the merchant quarter. I've watched your patrols change routes, seen your soldiers looking over their shoulders, heard the whispers about the Caruso family losing its grip." The room fell silent. Daniel's expression revealed nothing, but Jennifer caught the slight tension in his shoulders. She'd just confirmed his family's vulnerability in front of witnesses. Vincent broke the silence with a low chuckle. "Well, perhaps she is more than just street trash after all." "She's a security risk," Rafael snapped. "She knows too much. We should eliminate the problem before it grows." "Touch her, and you'll answer to me." Daniel's alpha command rolled through the room like thunder. Rafael actually flinched. Victoria continued her predatory circling. "My son seems to have developed a fascination with you, girl. That makes you dangerous in ways you don't understand. Tell me, what do you want from all this? Money? Status? Or is it Daniel himself you're after?" Jennifer's cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. "I want to survive. Everything else is secondary." "Honest. At least," Victoria returned to her seat. "But honesty won't protect you in this world. The families we play against would tear you apart for sport. They'd use you to get to Daniel, torture you for information, or simply kill you to send a message. Which is why she needs training, Daniel interjected. Vincent, I want her educated in pack politics and family protocols. Antonio, arrange self-defense lessons. Raphael, I'm not babysitting your pet Omega. No. Daniel's smile was sharp as a blade. You're going to teach her how our enforcement systems work. Consider it penance for your failure to notice the merchant quarter situation before a homeless girl did. Raphael's face darkened with rage, but he nodded stiffly. Refusing a direct order from the Alpha King would undermine his own position. Victoria stood, smoothing her suit. 1 month. We give her 1 month to prove her value. If she's truly useful, we revisit this arrangement. If she's a liability, she left the threat hanging. Agreed, Daniel said. Jennifer, you'll attend all family council meetings going forward. Watch, listen, learn. This is the world you're entering, ruthless, political, and utterly unforgiving. As the family members filed out, each gave Jennifer a final assessing look. Raphael's was pure hostility. Vincent's held cautious interest. Victoria's promised future confrontation. When they were alone, Daniel approached her. Still want time to think about my offer? Jennifer looked at the portraits on the walls, the throne-like chairs, the cold magnificence of a room built for ruling. This was what accepting meant, stepping into a world of pack politics and family warfare, where one wrong move could be fatal. They hate me, she said quietly. They fear what you represent, an unknown variable, someone I've shown interest in who isn't pack, isn't alpha, isn't from a family they can control or predict. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. But you held your own in there. Impressed even my mother, which is nearly impossible. Raphael wants me dead. Raphael wants everyone dead who threatens his position in the family hierarchy. He's ambitious and dangerous, but ultimately loyal. Daniel's thumb brushed her jawline. I won't let him harm you. Can you really promise that, in a world like this? No. His honesty cut through the tension. I can't promise you'll always be safe, but I can promise I'll burn down anyone who tries to hurt you. The vow should have terrified her. Instead, it sent heat coursing through her veins. Your family will test me, push me, try to break me to see if I'm worthy. Yes. And if I fail their tests? Daniel leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing hers. Then you prove them wrong. You've survived 2 years on the streets alone, Jennifer. You're stronger than they think, smarter than they assume. Show them the wolf beneath the Omega exterior. His words ignited something fierce in her chest. Not submission, but challenge. Sunset, you said, for my answer. The offer still stands. Jennifer looked once more at the council room, at the seat Daniel had clearly intended for her, positioned close to his own. At the world of power and danger she was being invited to enter. Her heart wavered, caught between fear and something that felt dangerously like desire. I don't need until sunset, she heard herself say. My answer is yes. 3 weeks passed in a blur of training, council meetings, and late-night debriefings with Daniel. Jennifer's world had transformed from survival on frozen streets to navigating the treacherous corridors of pack politics. But it was the quiet moments that undid her. Like now, past midnight in Daniel's private study, where she'd just finished reporting on whispers of unrest in the Eastern Territories. He sat across from her, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with pack tattoos. The firelight played across his features, softening the harsh lines of authority. "You're getting better at reading political undercurrents," he said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "Vincent says you have a natural instinct for it." Vincent is easier to work with than Raphael. Jennifer accepted the glass, their fingers brushing in what had become a familiar electricity. "Your cousin still looks at me like I'm something he scraped off his shoe." "Raphael looks at everyone that way. It's his charm." Daniel's lips quirked. "But he hasn't tried to undermine you in 3 days. That's progress. He's just waiting for me to fail." "Then don't give him the satisfaction." She sipped the wine, rich and complex like everything in this new life. "Is this how it always is? Everyone constantly testing each other, looking for weaknesses? In families like mine, yes." Daniel moved around the desk, settling into the chair beside her instead of across. Closer, always pushing closer. Power doesn't allow for genuine trust. Only strategic alliances. That sounds exhausting. It is. His dark eyes held hers. "Which is why you're dangerous, Jennifer." Her breath caught. "Dangerous how?" "Because when I'm with you, I forget to be strategic." His hand reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate, utterly at odds with the ruthless alpha king the world saw. "I just want." Heat pooled in Jennifer's stomach. Over the past weeks, she'd felt it too, the pull between them growing stronger, the casual touches lingering longer, the way his scent made her omega instincts sing with recognition. "Daniel." She started to pull back, but his hand cupped her face. "Don't." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Don't retreat from this. I see you do it every time we get close. You feel what's between us. Then you remember who I am and you pull away. Because who you are matters." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "You're the Alpha King. I'm a homeless Omega you recruited as an informant. The power imbalance is irrelevant to what I feel." "It's not irrelevant to me." Jennifer stood abruptly, needing distance. "You can give me orders, Daniel. You can command me, and my Omega biology would force me to obey. How am I supposed to know what's real and what's just instinct? Submission?" He stood too, but didn't approach. "Is that what you think this is? Me using Alpha Command to manipulate you into my bed? Isn't it?" The words came out sharper than intended. "You made me an offer I couldn't refuse, brought me into your world, gave me everything I needed to survive. Now you're here, looking at me like that, touching me like I'm something precious, and I—" Her voice cracked. "I don't know if I'm falling for you, or just falling for the safety you represent." The vulnerability in her confession hung between them like smoke. Daniel crossed to her slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. When he reached her, he didn't touch, just stood close enough that she could feel his heat. "3 weeks ago, you stood in my office and mapped out street networks without hesitation. 2 weeks ago, you challenged Raphael's territorial strategy in front of the entire council. Last week, you told my mother she was wrong about the Moretti alliance, and you were right." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "You don't submit to me, Jennifer. You argue with me, question me, push back when you disagree." Does that sound like Omega biology forcing obedience? She wanted to argue, but couldn't. "I won't use Alpha Command on you," he continued. "Not for this. What happens between us, if anything happens, will be your choice. Freely made. And if I choose nothing, if I want to keep this professional—" Pain flickered across his features, quickly masked. Then I'll respect that. You'll still have your position, your protection, your place here. I won't punish you for not wanting me." The promise should have reassured her. Instead, it made her chest ache. Because the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks crashed over her. She did want him. Not the Alpha King, not the protection he offered, but the man who stayed up past midnight listening to street gossip, who remembered how she took her tea, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating puzzle he'd ever encountered. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of me? Of this, of wanting something I might lose. On the streets, I never let myself want anything beyond survival. It was safer that way. But you," she looked up at him, feeling tears prick her eyes. "You make me want everything, and that terrifies me." Daniel's control finally broke. He pulled her into his arms, and Jennifer melted against his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. "I'm scared too," he admitted against her hair. "I've built my entire life on control, on never letting anyone close enough to become a weakness. Then you walked into my office soaking wet and clutching a briefcase, and something in me recognized you, claimed you." She pulled back enough to look at him. "The bond. Yes." His hand cradled her face. "I feel it too. Have from the beginning. But I need you to understand. This isn't just about biology or fate or omega bonds. I want you, Jennifer Smith, the woman who survived hell and came out clever and brave and absolutely maddening. I want all of you." "I don't know how to do this," she confessed. "How to be close to someone without losing myself." "Then we figure it out together." He leaned his forehead against hers. "No commands, no obligations, just us, learning each other." Jennifer's heart hammered. Every self-protective instinct screamed at her to pull away, to maintain distance, to protect herself from inevitable heartbreak. But beneath the fear, something stronger pulsed. Desire. Not just physical, though her body hummed with awareness of his proximity. But the desire to be known, to be seen, to let someone past the walls she'd built. "Slowly," she breathed, "as slow as you need. And if your family, my family doesn't dictate my personal life." Steel entered his voice. "You're mine to protect, Jennifer, from everyone, including them." The possessiveness should have triggered her defenses. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way she never had before. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Gentle, tentative. Testing. Daniel groaned, his arms tightening around her, but he let her control the kiss. Let her explore at her own pace until she pulled back, breathless. "Slowly," she repeated, but her eyes promised everything. His smile was pure warmth. "Slowly. I can do slowly." But as he kissed her again, deeper this time, Jennifer suspected they were both lying. Some things burned too hot for slow. The attack came during the spring equinox gathering, a formal event where all major pacts convened to renew territorial agreements. Jennifer stood beside Daniel in the grand ballroom, wearing a deep emerald gown that Victoria had insisted upon. "If you're to be seen at the Alpha King's side, you'll dress the part." She'd been at his side more often lately, not just as an informant, but as something the court whispered about in scandalized tones. The Alpha King's Omega. The room glittered with power and danger. Alphas from every major family circled each other like sharks, their elegant clothes concealing centuries of bloodshed and rivalry. "Smile," Daniel murmured against her ear. "You look like you're expecting an execution." "Aren't I? Half these alphas look at me like I'm their next meal." "Let them look. You're under my protection." His hand rested possessively on her lower back. "Besides, you've faced down my mother. These others should be easy." Before Jennifer could respond, a commotion rippled through the crowd. The Moretti delegation had arrived, late, which was a calculated insult. At their head strode Alessandro Moretti, Alpha of the Northern Territories. Tall, blonde, with ice-blue eyes that held nothing but calculation. His gaze swept the room and landed on Daniel with undisguised challenge. "Here we go," Daniel muttered. Alessandro approached with 3 of his pack lieutenants flanking him. He ignored every protocol, walking straight to Daniel without the customary bow of acknowledgement. "Alpha King," his tone dripped with mockery. "How kind of you to finally attend to territorial matters. We'd begun to think you were too distracted to fulfill your duties." His eyes slid to Jennifer with deliberate insult. Daniel's alpha presence flooded the room, making several lesser wolves step back instinctively. "Careful, Moretti. Remember where you stand." "I stand in a kingdom that grows weaker by the day." Alessandro's voice rose, carrying to the watching crowd. "A kingdom where the Alpha King takes homeless Omegas to his bed, while rival territories encroach on Caruso lands." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Jennifer's face burned, but she forced herself to remain still. Showing weakness now would confirm every suspicion. "You dare!" Daniel started, but Alessandro cut him off. "I dare speak what everyone thinks. The great Caruso family, brought low by an Omega street rat, your father would be ashamed." Daniel moved with predatory speed, grabbing Alessandro by the throat. "My father taught me to eliminate threats. Shall I demonstrate?" "Stop!" Vincent's voice rang out. He pushed through the crowd, his elder authority commanding attention. "This is a sacred gathering. No blood shall be spilled here." Daniel released Alessandro, who smiled coldly while adjusting his collar. "Of course, we're all civilized here. I merely wished to discuss the territorial agreements, or rather, the violations of them." He gestured, and one of his lieutenants produced a document. 3 of your enforcement patrols crossed into Moretti territory last month. That's an act of aggression under the treaty." Raphael stepped forward from the Caruso delegation. "Those were pursuit operations." "Your wolves were raiding our merchant convoys." "Prove it." "I can prove it." Jennifer's voice surprised even herself. Every eye in the room turned to her. Alessandro's smile was razor sharp. "The Omega speaks. How delightful. Tell me, girl, what could you possibly know about pack territorial politics?" Jennifer's heart raced, but she remembered Daniel's words. Show them the wolf beneath the Omega exterior. "I know that your raids on Caruso convoys weren't random," she said clearly. "They followed a pattern. Every 3rd shipment on the eastern route, always on moonless nights, always targeting medical supplies rather than more valuable goods." Alessandro's expression flickered. "Interesting fairy tale." "It's not a story. I tracked the pattern myself." Jennifer pulled out her phone, displaying the map she'd meticulously compiled. "Your wolves weren't raiding for profit. They were trying to create a medical supply shortage in the eastern territories, weakening Caruso's support among the civilian population there." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several neutral alphas looked at Alessandro with new suspicion. "This Omega has been feeding you intelligence?" Alessandro laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're basing territorial policy on gossip from street beggars?" "I'm basing it on Documented evidence, Daniel said coldly. Evidence that proves you've been violating the treaty for months while projecting your crimes onto us. Evidence gathered by an Omega with no standing, no pack, no credibility. Alessandro's voice hardened. I challenge its validity. In fact, his smile turned vicious. I challenge her right to be here at all. The room went silent. In pack law, an Omega without family ties could be challenged for their position. If Alessandro succeeded, Jennifer would be expelled from the gathering and lose all protection of Daniel's authority within this neutral space. She's under my protection, Daniel growled, which she's abused by involving herself in pack politics. An Omega has no right to present territorial evidence or influence alpha decisions. Alessandro looked around at the assembled packs. I call for a vote. Should this Omega be removed from the gathering? Vincent's face paled. Alessandro, this is highly irregular, but legal. The old laws are clear. Alessandro's eyes glittered with triumph. Unless the Alpha King wishes to claim her formally, make her pack, bind her with full Omega rights and responsibilities. It was a trap. Formal claiming meant permanent bonds, political marriage, binding Jennifer to the Caruso family in ways that would make her a target forever. It would also look like Daniel was making political decisions based on personal attachment, exactly the weakness Alessandro wanted